Hello, welcome to another episode of Low Tier Talks League. You know what's nice about having this icon sort of thing is I never forget our podcast show anymore because I remember we used to podcast so infrequently I can never remember what it was called. I always thought the word bronze was incorporated somewhere. But anyways, enough of my personal stories. Today we have another episode for you. The first thing I kind of wanted to talk about was team synergy. And I know you can't see this, DJ. I have two videos I'm gonna pull up here real fast and just play it. You might have seen it. The first one was a clip from Mike Check with Dardoch, so I'm gonna play that one first. Full screen this bad boy.
After the break. We'll see you soon.
Bridge player.
Oh, they're huddling.
They're huddling.
We don't huddle because our personalities are
I mean,
bad, you know?
we can't be that close to each other or we're gonna fist fight.
Well,
I mean, we're gonna brawl on stage.
A bit more time and he is.
All right. So there's that first one, and here's the second one. This happened after the Olay game, or not the Olay game. The TSM win. They're interviewing Olay. Not. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I apologize. This was after Team Liquid's win. They were interviewing Olay, specifically about double lift. So here is this clip here.
Sometimes double lift say something mean, and then I got hurt, and he said after I got hurt, and he suddenly said, "Oh, it's just joking." I was just like, "What is that?" But that happened really a lot. Like he didn't mean I don't know that's American joke or his joke. I don't know, but yeah. And then I talked to him. Maybe I don't. Sometimes I don't understand your slang. Sometimes I don't understand your mean. But yeah, I asked him politely, "Can you talk to me some nice way?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't notice." And yeah, we turned to be fine. So
It sounds like a great friendship in the bot lane.
So those are two. I don't know if you've ever watched those clips before, DJ.
I have.
So what are your thoughts on that? Because I think this week we kind of saw, at least with Echo Fox, maybe there could be cracks. There's the potential for it, I should say. I don't want to say that there are cracks right now, but for a team that's supposedly a team of friends, it's just kind of funny seeing that they have Dardoch there and they have Adrian there. I think Adrian's on Echo Fox, right?
Yeah, he's our sport.
So both of those players have had roster issues before, where people didn't want to play with them, or they didn't want to play with people on their team. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I've made my thoughts on Echo Fox eventually blowing up really clear throughout this season, but they haven't blown up yet. So I don't know. Maybe the team environment has something to do with it. I think the casters, at least, always attribute it to the fact that Dardoch respects Huni.
Yeah.
I believe the specific quote is like, he's been on SKT at a world championship. Like, I can't talk crap about him or how he plays after that. But I don't know. We'll see. Like I said, I expected this team to blow up and they haven't just yet. So maybe they're actually working together well. Who knows? Only the season. We'll find out in the summer, more or less.
That's fair.
Spring split doesn't really matter.
And I did bring up the whole respecting Huni thing because the only other player that you could argue that he should have respected was Piglet, and Piglet did not hold himself in the same way Huni does. When you watch Huni, you know that he knows that he's the best player. When you watch Piglet, he just feels like he needs constant validation. And maybe that's just a stereotype from watching certain interviews, pick and choose. But I'm more interested in what your thoughts are on what Olay's comments were.
So, Ole's comments about how people always say the double lift is toxic, right?
No. So I guess something happened last week on stream. I don't watch Olay or Double Lift, but I guess something happened and Olive May, I can't remember how to pronounce her name now. Ovale. basically, points out saying, "Hey, there's some tension between you and Double Lift," and Ole just basically goes, "Well, yeah, he was bullying me." So I talked to him, and he says, "Sorry, it was just a joke. I didn't know that it was offending you." Which seemed like that little interaction seems innocent enough for, I would say, 95% of the population, the league population. Except we know it's Double Lift, and we know his history with COG. We know his history with trash talking, but specifically his history with COG, where he's very, um, I guess he's very vocal about other teams' downfalls, if you will. And I when I heard that interview, it reminded me a lot of what you said. How long will this camaraderie last in Echo Fox? Will it break down? Because that's kind of something I expect from Double Lift. And granted, not a lot of it happened when he was on TSM, although I would attribute that mostly to the fact that Double Lift, while on TSM, was the reason why they were losing games on an international stage, at least. So, what are your thoughts on that?
From and I remember this video now. Honestly, from the way it sounds to me, this specific thing might be a culture gap because it's Double Lift was picking on Ole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a culture gap to me. Whereas I think Double Lift was probably ribbing him a lot, and that's probably not as prevalent in Korean culture where you're kind of like making fun of your friends.
Yeah.
But hell, you look at all of us, we make fun of each other constantly. And we have had people from outside go, how do you people not do you two actually hate each other?
Those were fun times.
Yeah. So I think that might be a culture gap. Of course, if in like a month we hear Ole left TL because Double Lift's a douche, then we'll have our answer. But from the sounds of it, and when I was watching that, it sounds more like Double Lift was just kind of giving him shit, and Ole wasn't used to that sort of humor.
Do you think
that's why Double Lift was like, crap, man, I'm sorry. I thought that we were just screwing around.
But do you think that might be kind of like, I don't want to say a sign or a foreshadowing, but do you think it kind of like speaks to how that team might go if something bad were to happen, when it doesn't become ribbing, it just becomes a moment of frustration or a moment of tilt, and Double Lift just a momentary snap, and he just says something. Because we know from Aphromoo that he didn't want to play on the same team as Double Lift anymore. And just this week, Aphromoo has come out saying how he misses playing with the old COG because they were just a bunch of friends. That's something that he has consistently said. When you watch Aphromoo, he comes off as a pretty friendly guy. So for him to go and say, hey, I've been playing with Double Lift for this long now, and I refuse to play with him anymore, tells me something major must have happened, and it was something that he was holding in and holding on to. I mean, they had just finished winning the North America for the first time. I believe that was the roster that they went to Worlds with and had a really impressive first week. So
sounds like NA all the time.
Do you think it's a troubling sign, or do you think Double Lift has matured and I'm looking too much into it?
Personally, I think you're looking too much into it. But like I said, time will tell. Like, we'll see what happens. It is spring split. Things change. But I don't think that's going to come out until they start losing, and I don't think they're going to start. I think there are very few teams that can challenge Team Liquid consistently when they're playing on their game.
And that kind of and I actually want to talk about Team Liquid first. I'm just going to double right back onto Darlock, and specifically what you mentioned a couple weeks ago. We've seen now, this is 4 games in a row where Echo Fox has looked shaky. I think, when I first watched this Echo Fox roster, and granted it's only we're about to enter week 4. They remind me a lot of old Immortals with Huni and Rainover, Polbelter, Wild Turtle, and Adrian. And we just saw all these games where they were just dominating from laning phase. They would take that snub onto the mid game, and they would just not let go. And then this week, we saw some cracks. Echo Fox finally lost their first game against CLG. Then they started regressing in the Optic games. Last week against TSM, they had the longest game in North America, where it was comeback from behind, and that wasn't the only comeback from behind game that they had last week. Do you think we're going to start seeing these cracks because of that? Or, one of the things that you've probably noticed is how Rick Fox has been going to more and more of these games. And it was speculated that at the beginning of the season that Rick Fox was going to have a heavier hand in helping transform Darshan or Dardoch, because being an NBA player, he knows what it's like working with arrogant personalities. He knows what it's like to work with strong personalities. So what do you think of that? And that's going to kind of tie into what I want to talk about next with Echo Fox. Kind of. Well, do you think they're looking worse? Do you think they're just kind of having fun, messing around? What do you think of them having to play from behind almost every mid game this year?
I think the CLG loss was because of a single mistake made by Dardoch. An unfortunate mistake. He just got hit at a really bad time when he was trying to engage, and it screwed everything up. And that ended up costing them the game, as opposed to the Optic game, where I honestly felt like they were just screwing around at the second half of it. Second half. Yeah, it looked more like just kind of messing around in the Optic game, as opposed to like, oh, we're actively playing crap. I feel like it was more of just like, especially like, you go in one at a time, it's because there was a miscommunication or because you're messing around at that point. Like, you're like, we're far enough ahead that we can actually manage for this. But I don't think that shows a crack for Echo Fox. Like I said, the CLG game, I think, was lost on a single play. It's unfortunate. It happens. It's best of ones. What I really want to see is how they shake up in playoffs. And I think that will talk more about the team than best of ones ever can. But we have a ways till we get there. So
6 more weeks, man. Yeah, I agree. I think, and this is kind of
one thing I do want to mention, though.
Go ahead.
Involving that. There was an article up today on Reddit, or not today, during the week on Reddit, about how a lot of the games this week were really influential for a couple teams because they had to win or they would have been just out of playoffs, period.
Wow.
Which is actually really funny because all of those teams did in fact earn their wins this week. So I don't think any single team is almost out of playoffs, except probably UOL. I think UOL is actually out of playoff contention after this week, and so is H2K.
And Golden Guardians.
Golden Guardians 1-5?
They're
0-6. Yeah, no, they're probably out.
Yeah, I was like, it's kind of weird that you're
Guardians.
calling out these EU teams. And I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But I remember one of the criticisms that TSM had that that COG didn't have this year that COG was doing really well was that COG actively was trying to play from behind. They would go into scrims and they would start losing laning phase so that they knew how to play from behind. So it's kind of neat that Echo Fox, whether on purpose or not, is doing that same exact thing. But with that being said, we talked about shaking things up earlier. This past week kind of settled the dust a little bit. I think after the first week, it's kind of hard to tell where teams are. But now we kind of have a better idea of what teams are good, what teams are bad, what teams are suffering from miscommunication. And so I'm going to pull up here the North American standings, as it were, at the end of this past Sunday. So we've got Cloud9, Echo Fox, Team Liquid, and Team Liquid tied at first. 100 Thieves at fourth. Clutch Gaming, CLG, TSM tied for fifth. Then we got FlyQuest at eighth. Optic Gaming, then Golden Guardians. Now, when you look at power picks, this isn't exactly what people thought it was going to be. There's the Echo Fox, the Team Liquid, and the Cloud9 up at top, as everyone thought. And there's TSM sitting in at a nice 500. COG also sitting at a nice 500. Whereas teams like 100 Thieves are 4-2. Do you think we're seeing a paradigm shift? And actually, I'm going to click here to Europe, where we got Vitality in first, Then Giants, Misfits tied for second. Schalke, Fnatic, G2, Splice, Rocket tied for fourth, and then HCK and Unicorns tied for last. So when when you come into the season, I think there's certain things that we take for granted. There's the old SK Gaming, there's Fnatic, there's currently G2 and Splice for Europe. In North America, there's always been Cloud9, there's always been CLU, there's always been Team TSM. Do you think we're slowly coming to, I don't want to say an age, but we're slowly coming to a time where maybe those teams aren't dominating anymore the same amount? Well, we see they're not dominating, but we can't take it for granted that they're all going to make it to the playoffs now? That was kind of a long-winded question, but...
So, Cloud9's still near the top. So, obviously, one old god still chilling up there. But is there a paradigm shift? I don't think so, because in all honesty, TSM has always looked like crap in the early spring split, and so is CLG. Like, there are memes about CLG looking like crap at the beginning of seasons and slowly building themselves up and doing well in playoffs. TSM has never not made it to the finals of North America. So, you can say like, oh, they're dropping some games. And you're like, well, a lot of them are working with really new rosters, having to adjust their play styles. They're going to be losing a lot of games. Team Liquid, of course, looks good, but they were touted as a super team, and they've had a lot of practice with each other before. They've most of the players have played with each other before on different teams. Echo Fox is, I don't know. Echo Fox has good players, I guess, and that's why they're sitting up there. And I guess there's a little more lightning in a bottle on that one. But I don't think, at least in NA, there's more of a paradigm shift, because it's just, you can't really count those teams out, even if they're looking shaky at the beginning of the split, because they usually look shaky at the beginning of the split. So okay. I can't call that a paradigm shift. As for EU, I don't like Fnatic. I've not made that a secret. However, they are another team that usually starts dropping games early and starts picking it up near the end of the season. They've done that in many seasons. They're like TSM in that regard. G2 got a downgrade on a lot of people consider it a downgrade in a couple of their sections. So of course they're going to be a little shakier. This is not the team that went to Worlds last year. And then Splice looked good one season. Misfits is still up there. They've looked shaky as all hell, but they're at least getting wins, and they're still looking like one of the better teams there. And then Vitality and Giants, they're just looking better. Giants is having really clean macro, and they're playing really well together. Team Vitality is looking like the team to beat this season. And part of that might also... Wait, what?
I was going to say, it's just really funny because Team Vitality is literally Giants Gaming's roster plus a new top laner.
And I was about to actually touch on that, is they have a lot of synergy already. They've already played with each other a lot, so they're going to look a lot better in the communication department. Hell, half the teams that are on the downswing right now that are usually pretty good are saying, yeah, we're getting used to having to have a new team, and we're having a bit of communication issues, but we're going to clean them up, and we're going to do better the second half of the split. And the casters have already parroted that a lot too, saying, with new rosters, it takes a little time to click. And while some rosters are already clicked and playing really well and really working well together, eventually the other teams are going to get used to each other and start getting better and start catching up. And that's where you're going to see these teams coming back and taking wins off the top teams right now who started with that little advantage. It's skill disparity is going to become a lot more apparent as the split goes on longer.
All right, so I'm going to ask you two questions. One of them is a question that is way too early in the season to ask, and the other one is way too early in the season to ask as well. First question, let's look at Europe for now. After 3 weeks, who do you see in the finals? Or let's go semifinals. Who do you think
Okay, I
will
was
be in
about
the
to say, like, are
semifinals?
you asking who's going to be in the playoffs? Because I can name the top 6 teams because they're not H2K or UOL.
There's still 8 teams from there. No, I'm asking specifically who do you think is gonna make it to the semifinals? The 4 teams.
Well, Fnatic and G2, I think, are still going to make it. Misfits are still going to make it. And I think Vitality is probably going to be the 4th. But I can see Giants toppling one of them and making it in.
All right. And let's ask that same question for North America before I ask my second question.
Echo Fox, Liquid, TSM, and Echo Fox, Cloud9. Sorry. I missed Cloud9. That's who I was. I was like, nah, there's 4. So yeah, Echo Fox, Cloud9, Team Liquid, TSM.
All right. I'm going to go backwards from you. I'm going to start with North America. I agree with Team Liquid, I agree with TSM, and I agree with Cloud9. I'm going to disagree with Echo Fox, if only because they remind me so much of Immortals, the Immortals super team. Not just
make it to semis?
not with not their first split with Huni. They might have made it their second split,
Okay.
but or if they did,
Yeah,
No, you're right, they did.
They lost
They did.
the semis to TSM.
No, you're right. They did because if you're first 2, then you'll make it to semis automatically. Anyways, regardless, I don't know how much Echo Fox can keep this dominating play style that they're doing because of what we said, where they're struggling to get into the late game consistently ahead, and they're really relying on these come from behind wins, which is good practice. I just don't think it's very sustainable. So I think Cloud9, Team Liquid, TSM are going to make it. And I want to say 100 Thieves. I was struggling between 100 Thieves and Counter Logic Gaming. I think 100 Thieves just look a lot more consistent between them. I don't think Echo Fox is going to make it in the top 2 seed, and I think they're going to fall in the quarterfinals, if only for a spring split. So that's where I'm at with that. When you look at Europe here, I think it's going to be Vitality. I think it's going to be Misfits. I think it's going to be G2. And I think I'm going to have to go with Schalke as the top 4.
That's an interesting choice.
I like Schalke's roster a lot better with well, let me make sure I'm not mixing up Schalke's roster with Giants Gaming's roster.
Betsy is the mid laner on Giants.
All right, I was mixing up because I was thinking of which team had Gilius in it. And Gilius is on the Giants. So yeah, I like Betsy a lot. I like Nukeduck better than Betsy, but I like Gilius a lot better than Pride. I think I don't know. It's kind of a toss up. I can kind of see either of those. I'm not too impressed with Fnatic right now. It just feels like every single win that they just have to earn through so much like hard work and dedication, and I just have to think that that's gonna burn out at some point. So I don't see Fnatic making it to the semis. Although I do think they'll make it to playoffs, so they'll do better. No, they'll be about where they were at last year, I think, where they'll make the playoffs, but they won't be able to get very far.
Mm-hmm.
So. And I don't think I really have to explain why I think Vitality, Misfits, and G2 will make it. I think G2 is really just is a communications issue, and I think that's a lot easier to fix than if you have a bad roster. Which brings me to my second question, DJ. Now that we've had 6 games to watch these new teams, which roster changes do you now agree with, and which ones do you think are questionable?
As a whole?
Let's tackle EU for a second. And you don't have to just choose one team, but just which rosters do you think? Because I think our opinions at least my opinions have definitely changed on these roster changes since now that I can watch them play.
That is a difficult question, actually. Crap. I think G2, well, I call G2 downgrading. I thought they'd play a little bit worse, but it's showing a lot more cracks than I would like on that team. Like Perks doesn't seem to be doing just as hot because he doesn't have a good enough team around him. And Yonkos, I feel like hasn't been playing to his top anymore. If you want to talk about like just a roster not doing as well as you would think from the paper, I'd say probably Splice. Onamne's been playing like crap. Xerxes hasn't been playing as great as he used to be. The other three aren't worth mentioning. So I don't think that team came together quite like it wanted to. Misfits obviously lost Ignar, and that hurt them quite a bit. It seems like they're a little less coordinated than they used to be, especially losing Power of Evil too. They've had to go with who's their mid laner now?
Samix
Right.
from Splice, incidentally.
Yes. Senkux, you mean?
Senkux, yeah. I get those two kind of
Because
mixed up.
definitely, like, you look at this team and you're like, well, like Hansam is already being touted as the best ADC in EU right now. Senkux has always looked really good. Max Lore is touted as being the best jungler in EU right now. That record does not show that. 4-2 isn't the best team on the block.
It's only one game
5-1 or
away.
6-0 shows best team on the block. And this is a team that is a lot of parts working together, that has worked together before, and they're still kind of struggling. I feel like they're going to be one of the big ones that comes up, and they're going to be a threat in the finals after they get their communication stuff sorted out. But other than that, like, it's hard to talk about the roster swaps because a lot of these teams just come in with brand new rosters. So it's like, it wasn't so much a roster change as in let's shuffle stuff around because a lot of EU people left. And or we're bringing in a lot of academy talent.
Okay. I'm gonna go Vitality and Giants Gaming and FC Schalke were huge surprise to me. I did not think either of those teams were going to do well. Vitality especially, I did not expect to see them at 5-1. As far as roster changes that I thought was questionable at the time, and now I'm just scratching my head, is Unicorn of Love. Like, I get bad roster. I get why H2K did what they did. I get why G2 and Misfits had to take downgrades. I get why Splice had I get why people left Splice to chase money. But Unicorns of Love roster was so questionable, and I thought it was because maybe they saw something more in Exile than what we saw at the end of Rift Rivals and at the end of Unicorns never made at the end of the summer split last season. But watching him now, especially now that he doesn't have a strong laner in Vizicachi, and now that he doesn't have a reliable jungler in Xerxes, although Trashy is supposed to be good, you're seeing him get abused a lot more, and it's looking a lot like when Unicorns of Love first debuted Exile, and it just feels weird that they tried building a roster around Exile. And who is the mid laner for Splice?
Senkux?
Okay, so Samix is the ADC for Unicorns of Love. So it's just weird that you would choose to build your roster around these two. Yeah, Samix looked okay. He's not really an ADC main. He started playing... He was originally a top main, at least. And Exile is just a very feast or famine mid laner. So those were two very questionable roster choices. And one that I'm surprised is not doing well is actually Fanatics, because they literally only changed one player. And as far as I know, Jebis, Neuro Support Jesus, I can't remember his name now, wasn't really a shot caller. He was just there, playing support. And that's kind of what Hylissang does, but Hylissang, in my opinion, does it better. It's weird to see Fnatic just kind of falling short now. We're seeing Reckless not being as consistent as he was in years prior. It's weird seeing them all of a sudden decide that they want to try playing around different lanes instead of playing around the ADC. And honestly, even though they're 3-3, I would say between the 4-3-3 teams are probably the weakest looking one. 5. Holy cow! There are 5-3-3 teams. And I'll say they're probably the second weakest one. I think they look stronger than Rocket. What about North America? What do you think about the roster changes in North America? I think this one's gonna be a lot easier. I feel like a lot of these were upgrades. But what do you think?
A lot of these were shuffles too, though. Like we with the franchising, it was more of like, all right, we're gonna take this person, this person, this person. We're gonna make a team, as opposed to like EU, where it was like, oh crap, we need to fill holes.
That were created by them moving to North America.
Yep. So if we're talking about lost draft choices here with new people, I think CLG has shown that Reignover wasn't a replacement for Xmithy or Omar God or Dardoch. I think they're missing Xmithy as a shot caller, and they're missing him as a stable jungler. Which is funny because now on Team Liquid, he's obviously doing a lot more. You can see him being a lot more proactive in play as opposed to when he was on CLG. He was a lot more of a passive jungler. And we're seeing that Reignover is trying to basically be he's either trying to be the passive jungler and then getting kicked in from the opposite jungler, or he's trying to be the aggressive jungler. And even with all of his aggressive choices, his laners aren't winning, so he can't do anything. Darshan isn't looking great. He's looking passable, just like he does every split. But if it's not a split push meta, we really don't see Darshan doing much. Huhi, who was looking a lot better last split, is making a lot more mistakes now, and just seems to be getting caught out more, or just making questionable plays. Blame Game brought that up with he was baiting his team into really bad fights that he could get out of, but his team couldn't. And Stixxay has just looked absolutely abysmal. And that might be because Biofrost just isn't a good matchup for him. It could be communication issues, like without having a jungler that you can communicate with as well. But then there's also a lot of mechanical mistakes he's been making, trying to go for the big plays and just getting absolutely destroyed. Like, once again, Blame Game points out, just, phase shifting into like 3 people and just immediately cutting off your escape because or cutting off any possibility of an escape from a bad situation because you use that as a defensive tool instead of a defensive one. And yeah, this team just looks like a mess right now, which is odd considering how safe their roster changes were supposed to have been.
Yeah.
Reignover was supposed to be a stable change. Biofrost was supposed to be essentially a Band-Aid change, but like it wasn't supposed to change their dynamic too much, but they have just looked absolutely all over the place. As on the flip side, Cloud9 has switched out contracts for Svenskeren, and his more aggressive style seems to fit Cloud9 a lot better. And Reaper's coaching seems to be doing Sven some good. And Licorice has looked all right. He's not feeding.
Yeah.
Or he's feeding because he's getting targeted, which is taking pressure off literally everywhere else on the map.
I'm pretty impressed with Licorice. I'm not gonna lie. He has some tough competitions at top laners here. And he's been showing up.
He's been showing that he is good enough mechanically, while also being able to absorb a lot. Like he of course is dying because he's getting focused because people are like, hey, new top laner, that's the weak link. We're going to target the crap out of that. And it's allowing Sneaky to pop off really hard because Sneaky doesn't have to worry about getting ganked because they're always top lane. And Sneaky can farm. Sneaky can become a late game carry. And in a stall heavy game like this, having your late game carry become a late game carry is really good. And of course, Jensen has always been a staple of mid lane. He's been doing well enough. So yeah, no, I think C9 got a really good pickup in Svenskeren, especially dropping contracts, because of course you've now put contracts on a bad team. Contracts ain't looking too good no more. He looked middle of the road on C9, and now he's not looking great on Golden Guardians. So I think they won a big victory there. Other than that, I don't think a lot of the TSM doesn't look good with their changes, obviously, but Once again, I think this is communication stuff. We'll see. It might end up being another yellow star with Mithy, or it might come together in the end. We'll see. Still too early to call on that one.
All right, so I'm gonna say I called the COG one, not trying to toot my horn. You can't replace a shot caller like Aframu with someone like Rainover, which is essentially what they did. They swapped out a better shot caller for someone better mechanically, and it's coming back to bite them because now they don't have communications. And I think people don't haven't realized yet that Rainover is not a strong shot caller. When you look historically at when he's done well, it's only been with Hooney when he has something that he can look up to play around. When he was on Team Liquid, and even before he joined Fnatic, Rainover did not look all that impressive. Um, Speaking of things that didn't surprise me, Contract's not doing well. In retrospect, shouldn't surprise me because Contracts was only able to play his hyper aggressive style of jungling. A, because the meta at the time, but also B, because he has strong laners to cover from. When you have Impact absorbing pressure and Jensen able to absorb pressure as well, you can do stuff like invading them early or trying to duel their jungler, which you can't do necessarily with lure low or high. High's fallen off mechanically, and I know a lot of people hyped up Lorlo, including me. But the thing is, like, being a good top laner doesn't mean much in North America when you have to go against people like Hooney. I know you don't really like Darshan, but Darshan, Impact, now Flame, Someday. You have all these really strong top laners. I mean, Someday at one point was considered the best player in the world. Not he was up there ranked 2 for best player in the world, right underneath Faker, and that wasn't always like consistent. So you have all these people, and then you have Flame, who obviously used to be so good that they named the Flame Horizon over after him. Rosters that kind of surprised me would be 100 Thieves and Clutch Gaming. 100 Thieves, I did not think were going to look this good, but their macro play, I think this season really shows how important macro plays are, because you see teams with a lot of good individual skill like TSM or Optic Gaming, or to a smaller extent Clutch Gaming, just not being able to close out these games as well as someone like 100 Thieves who have that strong late game shot calling. Of course, Golden Guardians would prove me wrong because they're supposed to be all about the shot calling because of high. But that's also a surprise to me. Other than that, I think you really touched on everything else that I wanted to talk about. FlyQuest has been surprising, but at 2-4, I'm not going to say that they won the roster change. They're doing better than where I thought they would be, which was 0-6. So, Golden Guardians, I'm not going to say that they were going to lose because I didn't expect them to be in the top half. But I mean, I kind of thought FlyQuest and Golden Guardians were going to be swapped. I thought Golden Guardians would be 2-4, FlyQuest would be 0-6. I don't really know if that constitutes me winning or losing their rosters, but just wanted to point that out. So, DJ.
Yes.
Before the podcast started, I said I had a surprise question for you. So I didn't tell you what this question was. So I'm going to ask you the question, but I'm going to answer it first so that you can kind of think about what you want to say first. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right, so the question is, and we touched on it every single week, how can Riot make these games shorter? We've been seeing longer and longer games. And in my opinion, it's not by nerfing Relic Shield, it's not by nerfing items. I think you make games shorter just by making, well, ironically being nerfed, making turrets go down faster. I feel like a lot of these games are determined by just farming the laning phase, because you can't really take turrets down super early, and then having turrets going down earlier, I think would it's kind of like when the game really starts, in my opinion. It's when fight starts to happen. It's when you see more aggressive roams, when you see swaps, and you see all these interesting things happen after the first turret's taken. Of course, this could also mean that we'll go back to a lane swapping meta or something else. That's just my quick fix, is to have team fights start earlier and then having inhib turrets and maybe even inner turrets be more durable to prevent snowballing. It's not, it's not a great fix. There's lots of holes in it. It's not, yeah, it's not a great fix, but that's what I got. What about you?
I think stopwatch does have to be gutted, unfortunately. I think it needs to be taken off. Like, you can't get a free stopwatch. I think its gold cost has to be up because most of the time it's more of you don't want to dive because you don't want to just get a stopwatch. But more so than that, it's true. Towers need to be a little less durable. They've actually increased their durability in this last patch, which was an odd choice. And snowball. Okay, one of the things I think that really needs to change is carry junglers need to be buffed up again, or at least their items, because the utility junglers, the tank junglers, are seeing far too much play because of late games. You want a jungler that scales well at the late, so you're taking Sejuani, you're taking Zac, you're taking Shyvana in some rare cases out of solo queue. You want a late game carry, or you want Kha'Zix at this point. So you need to buff up the carry junglers a little bit more so that you'll see more like Rengar, or hell, maybe buff the damage numbers on Rek'Sai since you don't want her being a tank anymore. Once that changes, mid lane, of course, needs a little shaking up right now. Some damage numbers need to be observed. Azir is way too powerful, which creates a trifecta of Azir, Malzahar, and Ryze because these are the late scaling. These are the late scaling mid lanes, and they clear well. Buff up the more assassin-y type mids, and we might see that go away. Bot lane, I don't think bot lane's going to change, honestly. Like, even if there's nerfs or buffs, like, playing for the late game has always been kind of the thing you do in professional league plays. You don't want to take a super early game carry. And then top lane, honestly, if we do all the rest of these changes, is going to switch back to tanks. Maybe the bruiser changes will shake things up too. We'll start seeing bruisers like Renekton up there again, but yeah, right now there's definitely an over reliance on you need to stay safe to play for the late because you cannot push in quickly enough to take a game early, which is odd considering the strength of Rift Herald in this meta.
Yeah.
I saw a very interesting post today about how SKT is lagging behind because they do not prioritize the Rift Herald and the amount of power it gives to teams. So I don't know about that. Maybe that is a reason why the early towers are a little too strong right now, is because when teams do get Rift Herald, it's like at 15 minutes after that protection is gone, and then they push down an important tower with that. But yeah, I'm not sure, honestly. There's a lot of things that need to change. We have the update to Bruisers coming pretty soon. We'll see how that affects it. I don't think the release of Swain is going to make waves in the current pool, so I don't think that's going to change anything.
I'd really like to see the meta shift away, because I feel like part of the reason why you have to play these safe games is because you're afraid of snowballing. We kind of saw in the Echo Fox game before they threw at the Infernal Dragon randomly that once you're behind, it's hard to catch back up, and there's not much you can do besides turtling. I know that's a big complaint with people who play solo queue because snowballing really feels like the only way you can hard carry a game. But it'd be nice to see kind of that focus less, so that we see more aggressive early games. I was just thinking while you're talking about stopwatch, what if because when you think about it, stopwatch is not very gold efficient on its own. There's no stats attached to it. You get the Zhonya's passive once for 600 gold. And of course, it's the threat that they have the stopwatch that prevents you from diving. What if stopwatch had a time limit on when you can use it before it broke?
That would have to carry over to the regular item, which I think would make it very, very useless. And I think it would be a mistake to balance an item around its free usage as opposed to its paid usage.
Well, I'm speaking specifically about the paid usage, and it doesn't have to be something short, something like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, something like that, kind of like Rod of Ages, but instead of vamping up, it vamps down. So it forces users to have to use them more aggressively early or avoid buying it. I don't know.
There is a thought to giving it counterplay by giving it a time limit. I don't think that's the direction they're going to go with it, because that creates a lot of what I'll call the what was it called, Edge of Night problem. Not a lot of people buy Edge of Night anymore for its spell shield, because you have to use it at a moment's notice to get use out of it, which makes it almost useless in solo queue because we can't think that far ahead into a fight. Pros can, we can't.
That's fair.
That's why originally it was so well used even in solo queue, because you had a large span of time to get that spell shield and then use it in a fight.
That's fair. Okay. I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on this. At the end, I'll plug our website again. It's not a great website. But there is a form there, so you can email us and let us know how do you think we can quote unquote fix this meta. I feel like every season we complain about the meta. Anyway, so we've been going kind of long here, real fast. We're going to talk about the games of the week to watch. Let's start with EU LCS. Are there any games here that interest you, DJ?
Let me scoot on over to next week. Not especially, no. I look forward to Giants versus Fnatic. I think I'll watch that one. Vitality versus Splice, I think will at least be entertaining. But as opposed to last week where I said Saturday looks boring as all hell, this time I'm not super excited for anything on Friday. I suppose Giants versus Misfits might be interesting. I might watch that one. That's like middle of the day too, so it'll be prime time.
The Giants versus Misfits and the G2 versus Schalke 04, I think, are games where all four of those teams, I believe all four of them are tied for fourth, along with Rocket. So this can be their chance to kind of push themselves away, separate themselves from the group. You need to start taking these early wins. You know, this is going to be week 4. On Saturday, I think the must wins are going to be Fnatic versus Giants. Fnatic needs to prove that they are this dominating team that they were before, and they have to be able to take games off of Giants. Other than that, I feel like Vitality and Splice and Rocket versus Misfits, those should go to Vitality and Misfits if they really in fact are playoff contention, semifinals, finals proven teams. They have to be able to win those games without too much problems. And let's go on down to North America.
So I'm a call out one that'll surprise you. I really want to watch Echo Fox versus Golden Guardians.
Because you want to watch them stomp again?
No, because I want to see what Echo Fox does versus an opponent that everyone underestimates. I want to see, there was a lot of, I think they were having fun last week when they were playing Optic. Let's see if they screw around against Golden Guardians again. And that'll kind of show what their temperament is of, in past seasons, a lot of problems with people with TSM was there was a lot of jokes of they're not taking their opponent seriously and that's why they're dropping random games. Echo Fox needs to go through that same issue where they'll probably have to be no, even with the worst team, you still got to actually try and think of ways and study them and actually try to fight them well. Especially, I'm highlighting this because they go against TSM or Team Liquid the next day. So they're definitely going to be focusing more of their practice time on how are we going to beat Team Liquid. I want to see how much effort they actually put in the Golden Guardians game, or if they walk in blind and just screw around. Because they can drop a game to Golden Guardians if they do that. Because they definitely, while I am saying this team is pretty good, they definitely are not the top tier of the mechanical players that can totally lose a game because they're playing stupid. Team Liquid versus Cloud9 on the same day is going to be very interesting to watch as well. Other than that, the other games aren't super interesting. Going to Saturday, TSM versus CLG, Team
mean-
Liquid versus Echo Fox. We got a prime 2 hours of good play, so that'll be fun to watch.
All right, so I think this is another. I almost feel like every week that TSM's not going against Echo Fox, Cloud9, or Team Liquid has to be a must win because they started off the season so poorly. So obviously that's gonna be a must win. Low hanging fruit, Cloud9 versus Liquid. It's gonna be really interesting. I'm especially excited to watch Licorice versus Impact. And Sneaky Smoothie versus Double Lift Olay. I think those two are going to be really cool. Jensen versus Pobelter. Pobelter's been making a name for himself as the best mid laner. So it'd be kind of interesting to see that. Other than that, I'm really excited to see Optic Gaming versus CLG. I think at this point it's too late for Optic Gaming to try making it to the playoffs. I know they're only like 2 or 3 games behind. But they're competing against the likes of TSM, Cloud9, Liquid, Echo Fox. There's 4 teams already right there. That leaves only 2 spots, which I think 100 Thieves and COG are going to take. So Optigame's going to really have to step up if they want to. And going against the COG, who is on the upswing, but not necessarily at their peak yet, would be the perfect time for them to test themselves. Sunday, we're going to see Liquid versus Echo Fox. And I tell you what, I do not envy Liquid this week. I see them losing one of these games because that's just a brutal weekend for them to go against Cloud9 and Echo Fox right after. Same thing that I said about last on Saturday's games applies here to Optic Gaming and TSM. Real fast, what do you think of the TSM COG rivalry? I really feel like it died down a lot ever since Double Lift left TSM to join Team Liquid and came back. But I feel like it's not very hyped up anymore, especially since Aphromu's no longer on CLG. Like I feel like CLG doesn't have any of the players on it that were part of the original rivalry between TSM and CLG.
So normally I'd say, regardless of all the good points you just made, Riot is still going to overhype the ever living shit out of this match. However, there's Team Liquid versus Echo Fox, so they're going to be hyping that matchup over that one. So yeah, I think this one's definitely going to fly underneath the radar. It's still TSM, it's still CLG, it's 2 of the biggest orgs in NA. There's going to be a big, even if it's not super like rivalry heavy, with players. In the end, Hotshot and Reggie are still like the big rival ones. So there's still gonna be a lot of hype surrounding it, but I think TL versus Echo Fox is going to overshadow that completely.
All right. So that's all I got. I got no surprise after that. So I'm gonna have you take us away, DJ. I think you have a prettier voice than I do.
Well, I can't argue with that. Well, until next week, this has been Low Tier Talks League, and we'll see you on the Rift.